Well, hello there and welcome. This is WEDucation, a podcast for up-and-coming wedding planners. My name is Donna Kim, and I am the owner of The Perfect Details. Last week, it was my very first podcast episode, and if you took the time to listen, thank you. And if you haven't had a chance to listen yet, you can find my podcast on my website at theperfectdetails.com/podcast. So last week we talked about how I got started in wedding planning, and I also gave my top 5 tips for smooth wedding planning. And this week I wanted to talk about networking. And for someone like me who's naturally very shy and introverted, networking was, it still is, probably one of the most frightful things that I have to do. To me, there is something so daunting about going up to total strangers and saying, "Hi, my name is Donna Kim and I'm a wedding planner." No, thank you. But if you have to build your business and promote it, you have to do it if you're the only person, right? So nothing I really enjoy doing. But I was fine meeting individuals one-on-one, and I ended up doing this quite often, and that was actually pretty effective for me. I was able to get a good sense of a vendor and evaluate them and see if this is a person that I wanted to do business with and refer. But a large group of people, strangers, no. I felt like a very tiny fish in an ocean of sharks. But I pushed myself to go out of my comfort zone, and I went to networking groups for wedding planners. I went to networking groups for regional groups focused on referring each other, and that's a story for another podcast. And then I went wider and went to networking events sponsored by a local chamber of commerce in the area. And then I learned about BNI. Now, if you've never heard of BNI, that stands for Business Network International. So obviously they're pretty large. They have regional groups all over the world. And again, they focus on referring each other and only allow one vendor per category. So maybe this works for some wedding planners. I found that this wasn't a good avenue for me. Probably the most important reason was that weddings are very personal, and just because someone refers you doesn't mean that you'll book the wedding. In fact, I had a difficult time in these types of groups because I felt like to be a part of the groups, I needed to make sure that each one of these vendors was someone that I would personally want to use, and I often didn't have this feeling. So this leads up to one of my networking stories. That's something that I can laugh about now, but at the time, I did not think it was funny. So I had worked with a photographer on a wedding, and we had stayed in touch, and she had invited me to attend a local Chamber of Commerce networking event. So I said, "Oh, yes." And I thought, "Oh, this is great. I can go with someone. I can hide behind her. I'll be her partner in crime. This will be great." So we got there, there was an opening speech, and the speaker encouraged us to go on our own and meet people individually. Again, that's my worst nightmare. But I thought, oh no, my photographer friend, colleague invited me. She'll take pity on me and she'll let me network with her. And no dice. She very nicely but very firmly told me that this is not why we came here and to go network on my own. Ouch. So I meekly went around the room. I met a few people. One of them actually ended up being an insurance agent. I know, shocking, right? But he actually ended up being someone that I used and I really liked and referred myself. But then I saw someone that looked familiar and I thought she was looking at me like she knew me too. So, oh great, I'm going to go up and I'm going to introduce myself. This is great. I've been saved. Who was this person? I thought this person was a guest at a commitment ceremony that a friend of mine had had. And this was before I actually was a wedding planner. I did her flowers and I helped her with her invitations. So it was a pretty small wedding. It was in the backyard of one of her parents' friends' homes. And to me, this woman, this guest, was pretty distinctive because she wore very masculine 3-piece business suits with a tie. So I thought, oh, look, there she is. I thought that's who she was. I was going to go up. I went up to introduce myself to her, asked her if she, knew the same people and was she at this wedding. And that's when I saw the name tag on her jacket. And then I realized it was a guy. Oh, gee. So I remember thinking, oh no, 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 this is not who I thought it was. I thought this was a woman. But of course, you can't say that to the person, so you have to start engaging in conversation. Let's call him Stan. So Stan, is looking at me, and I have to now close my mouth and pretend like I'm trying to network with him when really I want to just run and disappear. So we exchange our business cards. I hope this is the end, but of course it isn't, because this is a networking event. And of course, Stan is part of BNI. So he wants me to go to his chapter's weekly meeting. And part of being a member of BNI is to recruit new members. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go to this one meeting. I'll see what it's about. I need to give it a chance, right? So BNI meetings typically meet really early, like 6:30 in the morning early. And when you're a night owl like me, getting up for these meetings isn't easy. But I did promise that I would go, so I kept my commitment and I went to the meeting. And I thought it was interesting. It was a good experience to go through. I understood how they refer to each other. I understood this wasn't going to work for me. So then I say to Stan, thank you for inviting me to this meeting, but this is not something that I want to do. It also costs a few $100s a year for a membership as well. So you have to definitely think about whether this is going to work for you. I think it works better probably if you're a little bit, like a cake designer, decorator, baker probably would work better. Even a photographer would be better. But a wedding planner, again, it's so specific and so personal. I think that just wasn't a good match. But he says, okay, I'm fine that you are not joining, but can we schedule our one-to-one meeting? And this is another aspect of BNI. You're supposed to get to know individual people. And this is the part that I was like, oh yeah, I definitely could do this. This definitely is something I'm more comfortable in. I've already established that Stan's business is nothing related to what I would do in wedding, and we would never refer each other. I think it was computers. But I agreed to the one-to-one meeting. It's coffee. So he's been calling me, though, and talking to me for some time and telling me personal things about himself, like his marital status and that he has kids and clearly that he's single. So it's obvious to me he's interested in more than just business, but I'm trying to be professional and trying to be nice and not trying to give him too much information. I'm sure that's probably was what kept him calling me. But in any case, now that he knows I'm not joining BNI, and now that I've agreed to the coffee meeting now becomes, oh, can we have lunch? And then the lunch becomes, oh, wait, but I think it would be great if we did dinner on a Friday night. And I really get into an uncomfortable spot with this, because I don't like to say no to people, especially when it's related to business. And I come from a customer service background of never saying no, but there's something about this that's starting to get a little bit out of hand. And my spidey sense is telling me that something's wrong. Like I need to go run for the hills. So in the back of my head, I know what I need to tell him to get him to back off, but I also know that I can't tell him what I want to say. And what I really wanted to say was, dude, I thought you were a girl. Now, if I could and if I had endless budget, this is where I would plug in and edit in "Dude looks like a lady" from Aerosmith. But I did research that, and according to copywriting laws, I can't use any part of it. So I can't. But in any case, you just have to imagine that I want to, edit that music in right now, because that would be so perfect, because this moment in my life was kind of like a surreal movie. So the end of the story is that after trying to get me to meet him for dinner, and mind you, the dinner had gone from like a Wednesday night to the Friday night to the Saturday night, and then I realized, okay, this is getting out of control. I'm not meeting him for anything at this point. I did finally, I think I made up a boyfriend at the time, or I created a situation, and, made sure that he understood that I wasn't interested in a relationship or a date or dinner. And to me, it made me really angry, I think, in retrospect, that he was treating this networking situation as a dating service. And this wouldn't be the last time that this would happen. And I think a lot of people probably have this. And this is a natural way that people meet. But I was so focused on my business and not interested in this aspect when I was, suffering through networking. I wanted to network. And it wasn't networking for a boyfriend. So, but luckily, all is well, and the story ends well, and I didn't have to have dinner with him after all. I guess all of this would have gone away, and it wouldn't have had this awkward situation if he knew that I knew that he was a girl, right? So, but I will say, because of this weird situation, this weird story, I definitely stopped going to networking meetings. So I was like, I'm done. And I was lucky that I discovered that I had good instincts and that I was creating my own network of vendors by working with them one-on-one and finding them on my own, whether it was through a wedding I was doing for a client or, finding them through another vendor that I happened to work with. So, when I think back on this story now, it's still funny to me. And I still like to tell that person I thought that he was a girl. But in any case, I can't even remember his name anymore. And I think that's probably for the best. And I like to think that I have learned a lot more about business communication. But, that being said, the wedding business is quirky and it's very touchy-feely. And as someone that doesn't naturally love to hug and kiss strangers, this is something that I really had to get used to. And I honestly, I don't know if I still am. I definitely can do it to a point, but it's definitely something that I'm not wired for. So I guess with this story, if I had to offer some tips on networking, I'd say that the first one is to play to your strengths. If you're good in groups, do the groups. If you like to meet people one-on-one, do that. It doesn't hurt to go out of your comfort zone once in a while, but definitely do what's comfortable for you in general. I think the second thing I'd say is to trust your instincts. And this won't be the last time I say this about anything related to do with the wedding planning business, but I find that this is so important. And I find that as I get older, I have better instincts. And there are so many things that I can look back on and say, boy, I wish I had done things this way and not that way. Or I wish I had listened to my inner sense and not done this, but done this. We've all done that, right? So I realize now I didn't have really good boundaries between my personal life and my business life when I was a wedding planner. I was sending emails to clients at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was meeting them at 11 o'clock at night. And it worked for me and it worked for my schedule. And I didn't do this all the time, but I do realize now how much more important it is to have boundaries and business hours and parameters on how you sculpt your business life to work with your personal life. So, and I think the last thing I'd say is to make sure to look discreetly at the name tag of the person that you think you might know. You might be in for quite the surprise. And I'm thankful for name tags because at least that, cleared things up right away. But I also would have known as soon as this person opened his mouth because I realized at that point it was a man as well. So if you're still listening to my story, thank you. I hope you found it funny. I hope you appreciate me telling this crazy story. I've tried to write this one a few times and it just doesn't come across the right way. And, if anyone from Aerosmith is listening and wants to give me the rights to Dude Looks Like a Lady, I would happily put it into this podcast and re-edit it. But if not, you're just going to have to use your imagination or play it in the background when you listen to this podcast. So you can find my podcast on my website at theperfectdetails.com/podcast. And I'd love for you to leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know if you have other things that you'd like to hear me talk about. I also have an Intro to Wedding Planning webinar available on my website, and I'm working on some online training that I hope to offer soon. So thanks for listening to WEDucation, and I hope you have a great day, and bye for now.